Welcome to the Daily Dope Report. I'm your friendly commentator, this Brandon Strong. So, anyway, notice there's a lot of suggestions in my messages about how I could improve my channel and stuff, but see, the thing is I don't really do this very often. I mean, I put out a few videos here and there, but this isn't like something I do seriously. I just do it to kind of blow off some steam and inform some people and, maybe just share this with others or be a voice a little bit, as much as I can for the people that, and it's really the common sense voice. This isn't like an extreme view that I have about marijuana. I think it's pretty much the common sense position that most people have, especially people that smoke weed, and especially people that have been. I'm getting kind of old. I've been like thinking my whole life, oh yeah, someday marijuana is going to be legal, and. Gee, when I was saying that shit when I was much younger, I couldn't have imagined the system that we have today with where you can go into like a dispensary type thing, and basically it looks like, what you would dream of back in the days of Prohibition. Like 30 different kinds of bud, different kinds of hash and wax and oil and every treat under the sun you could imagine. I mean, a regulated market's looking really good compared to the black market that we grew up in, where you're lucky to find some cheap, Betty Crocker brownies with somebody just ground up the weed in it. They didn't even bother extracting into the butter. They just ground the weed right into the brownie mix. We grew up in some pretty primitive times, and when I was thinking of legalized marijuana, I was thinking, you go to the store, you buy a pack of joints, and they look just like cigarettes or whatever. They might even have filters on them. Maybe that's the future. I don't know. I think there will always be a market for basically raw cannabis, whole plant cannabis, whole plant medicine. That's never going away, guys. It's never going away. Unless this guy succeeds. For all intents and purposes, this guy, Kevin Sabet, has been the most irritating rash on my ass when it comes to this channel and making videos and just following somebody around. And I don't say that because he's like powerful and he wields like great respect from the public when he speaks on the subject, and people are like using what he says as policy still, even though he's not even in the government anymore. I don't say it because of that. I say it because every time I do a story, it seems like he's chiming in somewhere, and it's really annoying. I mean, this guy is basically the mastermind of a lot of shitty drug policies. He's the mastermind of a lot of propaganda that you've been seeing for years. He was an advisor under 3 presidents, and none of them did anything better than the one before them. I think even the things that Obama did do, his kind of a hands-off approach, as people call it, wasn't with Kevin Sabet's approval. No, sir. His smarter approach to marijuana, by all means, is to continue a prohibitionary system. But when you ask him about that, he always kind of like steers away from actually talking about, well, what do we do about it? Do we go crack down? Do we throw people in prison? Do we use hard sentencing? What do we do? He's always evasive on that. But if you actually catch him giving an answer, he's always trying to avoid saying that he wants anybody to get locked up. So I don't understand what you're trying to do, man. Are you trying to like win the battle of the mind and just make it so people just realize one day that hey, getting high really isn't all that fun. I think I'm gonna quit. I don't really understand how you can have his vision of marijuana being shut down and nobody going to jail. Just ain't happening, man. People want to smoke marijuana, and it's medicine. People are benefiting from the medicinal properties of marijuana, whether they're recreational users or medical users or whatever. But yeah, people need their medicine, and it's doing great things against the opioid crisis and epidemic and even national emergency that we're dealing with. What we're looking at is something that can both alleviate some of the pain associated with quitting narcotic medications like opioids or even trying to kick heroin, as well as easing some of the symptoms of withdrawal. And we're starting to find out why scientifically. It's because of what cannabis can do to your memory and your not only your memory but your reward system. Aha. And those are important things to understand when you're combating addiction, especially a powerful substance addiction. Because addiction itself is a psychological riff that people have. It's not some kind of, I mean, it is a disease essentially, but it's not like something that's like a physical rotting of your organs like cancer or something. It's more of a disease in the sense of in the mind it becomes a festering you know thing that cripples your mind. You tend to not be able to function properly without going through the reward, the come down, the crash out, the depression of being addicted, and then the whole cycle starting back over again. So anyway, we all know that cannabis can help in all these things, and this guy, he don't want to hear that. So anti-legalization group urges feds to systematically shut down cannabis industry. Here we go again. Legal marijuana states are inviting shift in enforcement, says smart approaches to marijuana leader. This is Polly Washburn. As you can see, cannabis staff since 2016. She's kind of still new. It's almost been there a year. Here's the report that they wrote. The Cole memo 4 years later. And it's just basically the same old everyday tripe about, and it gives you this bullet list about what they failed to do. And it's, same stuff you constantly hear Sam chiming in about. And then here you have the actual Cole memo. And what this memo basically does is it kind of neuters the federal government from cracking the skulls of people in states with legal medical marijuana by making the funds not available for them. And they have that same bullet list. And that bullet list is the things that the states should have to demonstrate that they are doing in order for the feds not to, go back on the Cole memo. And you remember when Sessions sent out his minions to investigate, to see if the Cole memo was being violated, and they were basically just trying to cherry pick any data they could get to support that. And that's what all this is. It is that cherry pick data coming back to haunt us. And this cherry pick data doesn't necessarily mean, oh, they got us, man, marijuana's bad, so maybe we should stop all this shit. No, there's nothing like that. The data that they're using is horse shit, and none of it really proves anything. It's correlative at best in some, when you're talking about the traffic fatalities, they got nothing on it. So, all right, now I already told you everything about this shit. Let me go ahead and read it. Jeff Sessions has more reading about marijuana regs on his desk. This month, governors from Alaska, Colorado, Oregon, and Washington the first 4 states to legalize recreational marijuana, each sent letters to the Attorney General defending their respective regulatory regimens designed to uphold the Cole Memo. The Obama-era memo outlined law enforcement and financial oversight priorities for states that have legalized marijuana for medical and recreational use. Let's not forget, some of these places, it's like, hey, you can't afford to do a marijuana investigation and arrests and all this shit in court cases. You got all these rape kits you didn't test and all that shit, so they really don't have the money to do all this shit they're talking about. On the 4th anniversary of the memo, Smart Approaches to Marijuana, a nonprofit group opposed to marijuana legalization, announced it had sent a report to Sessions and other lawmakers detailing how these states have failed to live up to the responsibilities outlined. Based on its report, the Cole Memo 4 years later, Sam recommended that Sessions take measured action to successfully protect public health and safety. As you will see, all this shit is blowing smoke up your ass. Look, man, they legalized back in 2012-ish in Colorado. The world didn't, Colorado is still there. Nothing bad's happening. If there was a public health and safety issue, Colorado would be already on top of it. But there's not. In fact, they're so happy about the program that they got nothing but good things to say about it. So I don't know what this bullshit is. Limited federal resources should be used to target the big players in the marijuana industry who are circumventing Department of Justice guidelines and state regulations. So what he's basically recommending is that the federal government can dig up a little bit of money to go after the giant players, as if that's some kind of a little nickel and dime endeavor. It's not a nickel and dime endeavor, you buffoon. When you go after the big players in the marijuana industry, the people that are well-moneyed, they have millions of dollars, maybe not like in one place at one time, but it's all spread out in investments and people and assets and people working for them and shit. So give me a break, man. You try to take something like that down, guess what else they got? They got a wall of lawyers. It's just not going to go too well. And it's not going to be cheap. You're not going to usually win. So it doesn't even sound like a good strategy. In a phone conference Wednesday, Kevin, and this is also something that Hugh Hewitt, this conservative radio guy, he basically said the same thing to Sessions like earlier in the year, like, oh, well, you could always use RICO and just go shut a couple of these big players down as if they were organized crime operations. And that would just scare everybody else into shutting down. Whatever. You can try whatever you want. I'm not saying to do that because that is scary as hell. And it just basically puts people in a position where they have to defend themselves. That's all. Do we have to live in a government that is this authoritarian fucking fascist, though? Where's Antifa? I mean, I'm not into Antifa, but I don't give them hard criticism. But if you're anti-fascism, where are you at, man? These people are talking about shutting down something, like they don't approve of it. Although the people in the actual states say, oh, hey, we're running a pretty good program and everything's going good. We can handle any problems that arise. In a phone conference on Wednesday, Kevin Sabet, whatever, Sam's president, went further saying, we do not want individuals prosecuted. Huh? We want the industry to be accountable. That doesn't make any fucking sense. What are you talking about? Arresting everybody and then charging them so much money that they can't afford it and then they just disappear? What are you hoping to accomplish without arresting or prosecuting? I don't get it. The industry, starting from the top, should be systematically shut down. Fuck off. That is like the most absurd thing I've ever heard of. Just whatever, you can't justify saying that. Starting from the top. You act like this is like there's one manufacturer that grows all the weed and then they fucking bag it all up and then they ship it all to their little second level dealers or some shit. What in the fuck are you talking about? Systematically shut it down, starting from the top. There is no top, man. Have you done any kind of at all market analysis of the cannabis industry in Colorado or anywhere else? I know you haven't, because there's no fucking way you could be like, we're going to shut it down from the top down. Are there big players in Colorado? Probably. I'm not out there. I don't really know what the fuck it looks like myself. I haven't done a market analysis, so I'm kind of talking, I'm kind of flying off the cuff here. But what I know though is that this sounds like some kind of grandstanding, sensationalistic hyperbole or something. Like you act like there's like, I want to say, like crooked banksters that rigged the whole fucking like system so that they could gamble your money until they burn out, and then they fucking crash the whole world's economy. We can't go in there and shut them down from the top down, and we know who the fuck they are by name and what companies they worked for. Why can't we shut that down from the top? And you're talking about those Mexican drug cartels. Well, what about the money launderers over at HSBC? Nobody even got fired or laid off or anything for that shit. They laundered billions of fucking blood money dollars from Mexican drug cartels. Oh yeah, and by the way, Al Qaeda too. But anyway, this starting from the top and shutting systematically down sounds stupid. And by the way, you know how much money it would cost to shut down all the grow operations that are required to make Colorado tick? You would have a monster task at hand. Moving on. The SAM report says that Colorado, Oregon, and Washington have failed to comply with 7 of the 8 guidelines of the Cole Memo, which include preventing access to minors. Not true. By the way, by what measurement? Because minors have always had access to cannabis. Now, it's quite possible that even though they still want to get it, the same amount of minors want to get marijuana as before. That hasn't gone up. It's just that they might have a little bit of an easier time getting it. Not too much. Or they might have a little harder time getting it. It depends on who they know and where they live and shit. And I'm just saying this because I know how it would be if I was a minor and I needed to get some marijuana and it was actually legal in the state I lived in. So that's kind of a bullshitty thing anyway, even if you had hard numbers to back you up. I don't think it really depended on whether or not the legalization was working to prevent access to minors. Now, what you are doing is you're saying, in good faith, we know that the people selling it at the shops are not selling it to fucking minors. You got to be 21 and up. And then from there, the people that are selling it to the minors are 21 and up. So they're the ones that can get in trouble. Flow to other states. Well, you're going to get a little bit of over spillage, but I don't think that's a big issue. And furthermore, who cares? I mean, maybe you do, but I wouldn't go shut the whole thing down because of it. Because guess what? If you take them out of the loop, and I always think to myself, does Kevin Sabet work for the Mexican fucking drug cartels? Because everything he proposes sounds like he's just like, hey, you guys got to stop doing this, all right? And then guess what? There's a huge vacuum that needs to be filled where there used to be a supplier for the demand, and now that supplier is instantly going to become the Mexican drug cartel. The Mexican drug cartels are probably pretty pissed that they lost Colorado. That was probably a pretty big chunky ass paycheck they were getting from them. So come on, give me a break. Flowing to other states, not a big issue. Drugged driving. I'm getting so sick of talking about that shit. Let's just say that all the studies that they've used, and I know the ones that they've used to make this report, are all horse shit. And when you're talking about drug driving, they still really don't have good statistical analysis of numbers because they don't have good numbers. They don't. Every time a crash happens, they don't be like, all right, everybody go to the fucking hospital. We're taking your blood. It doesn't happen. It wouldn't happen, and it can't happen. Even the people that are at fault half the time don't even get fucking tested for anything. And let's just say that once again, alcohol clears the fucking deck of all other drugs when it comes to driving fatalities and knowing for sure that, yep, that motherfucker was, the driver was drinking. We know that. We breathalyzer, we blood tested, whatever you want to say. They did, and they found out, and that guy or that person was drunk, and they killed whoever was in the wreck. Those are happening all the time, thousands of them a year. It's not as big of a problem as it used to be. That's steadily going down, and one of the things that is causing that decline is states that have legalized medical marijuana. Not only medical marijuana, but obviously recreational marijuana. It's going down in them states, and the numbers range from 5% to all the way to almost, it's like 18%. So whatever, man. There's no drug driving. The drug driving, all the statistics I've seen, I haven't seen anything that I would be like, yes, that's convincing. I am convinced that marijuana has made these numbers go up, but I haven't seen anything that made me feel like that. And even though AAA hasn't seen anything that made them feel like that, they still say that shit too. Growing of the plant on federal lands. So what you're talking about there is illegal grows on federal lands. I think that's going to happen no matter what, but I think you're probably getting a little bit less of it than you were before, because a lot of those people, just wanted to get into a situation where it was legal to grow a few plants or whatever. If they're growing a lot, maybe they're trying to get a license now. Of course, you're talking about Colorado sometimes. Regulations can be a little hard to navigate, could be a little expensive. Maybe some people are still trying to grow on federal lands. But I don't think that, you're acting like prohibition is going to make it so people stop growing on federal lands. No. I'm like I just said, I think the numbers have actually gone down on the growing on federal lands in Colorado. I'm pretty sure that the numbers have gone down there. States are inviting a shift in enforcement, like acting like he knows something. Like you don't know what you're talking about. The recommendations from the report, Sam says, cannabis businesses are pocketing millions by flouting federal law. No. They have a pact called the Cole Memo and other things like the Raurenbacher-Farr Amendment and other things. It basically was like a contract between the federal government and the states saying that, hey, we're going to do this thing and we can handle these regulations ourselves. They're not flouting the law. You're acting like the regulators themselves, like the police and the government, are like, hey guys, free for all, do whatever the hell you want. Fuck the Fed. That's simply not how it's going. It's a mischaracterization, and that's what Sam is famous for doing. And it's kind of passive-aggressive. Like, his wording kind of, like, sounds like he's not really, like, saying what I just said. He's just, they're flouting the federal law. That's a pretty fucking damning accusation. And then they're deceiving Americans about the risks of their products. That ain't true. You know how I know? Because people are sue happy as shit, dude. And if something, hey, this marijuana, this shit's safe, this dab, you do this dab and you won't die. I guarantee it. Well, nobody's died. Nobody's sued anybody because they got too blown away, or I don't even know what you're trying to say here. They're not deceiving people about the risks. If you're talking about long-term risks, or those fake-ass risks that you keep citing as facts that are completely false, then I don't know. I don't get you, because no one's lying about the risks of any marijuana products. All right, targeting the most vulnerable. Now I don't know what he's saying there, but I think he's talking about the medibles and children being attracted to him because they look like, he used gummy bears before as an example, and somehow he was allowed to have a whole ounce or a half ounce or some shit of medicated gummy bears. I mean, it was in Massachusetts, man. You're not even, back then when it happened, I think it was like a year ago, You ain't even supposed to be allowed to have that then. It was illegal. Schedule 1. Then he goes on to say they should not have access to banks, where their financial prowess will be expanded significantly. Whatever, man. This is just a hater, is what it sounds like. Just total hater. Like he's a stick in the mud kind of hater. Like, oh, I don't like what you guys are doing, so stop it. It's like, it's so annoying, man. Just go the fuck away, Kevin. Nor should they be able to advertise or commercialize marijuana. Oh, yeah. Marijuana should just be kept in the darkest, deepest corners where only Mexican drug cartel gangsters will sell some for you. Every argument Kevin makes is devoid of the fact that people will smoke marijuana whether it's legal or not. So he assumes that the drug war fucking worked for the last 80 years against marijuana. That somehow, when states started legalizing it, oh shit, they're letting the cat out of the bag. I thought we had this thing licked. Kevin, you fucking moron. When you shut down these American businesses that are entrepreneurs that are U.S. citizens, motherfucker, you're talking about shutting them the fuck down by, oh, you say you don't want people to get prosecuted. Well, too fucking bad. You don't shut down a whole industry of marijuana growers without some fucking blood being spilled and without people going to prison. So shut up about this shit right fucking now and quit working for the fucking Mexican drug cartels. Do you know they cut people's heads off? They cut hundreds of heads off a year. And you support giving them more revenue stream? You support them setting up fucking black markets all over Colorado, Washington, California, Oregon, Alaska. Man, you are a fucking gangster, ain't you, Kevin? The same report echoes some of Sessions' own claims in recent letters to governors of the 4 states, now stating, don't you think this is a concerted effort? Like him and Sessions actually talked about this shit? Why not? This guy's been in the White House for 3 administrations. That's a long time, man. You don't think he's still in there fucking talking to people? Like, hey, what do you think, Sessions? Think we should do this crackdown or what? And, they spew the same reefer madness, and it sounds, when more than one person says something, it starts to sound like maybe there's something to it. States with legal marijuana are seeing an increase in drug driving crashes and youth marijuana use. Bullshit and bullshit. Especially Colorado and Washington. They've just recently, in these letters we're talking about right up here, where they wrote letters to Sessions, that's what they said. They were like, no and no. We keep our own numbers. States that have legalized marijuana are also failing to shore up state budget shortfalls with marijuana taxes. No one ever said they were supposed to. They said that they were going to earmark the marijuana tax money for specific things, and they've done that in every case. Except for some shit going on in Washington that we're not really sure about, but they're ironing that shit out. And it's the same thing in Nevada. They're like, hey, we're going to make this much money in taxes off of marijuana, and then we're going to fucking use that money to do this right here. And they've already earmarked that money. So you're really threatening future tax projects that are already earmarked for when you talk about this crazy shit. But no one ever said that we're going to patch up those big ass holes that all those Republicans blew in all those budgets by giving all their fucking buddies tax breaks to billionaires and corporations. Happen in every state that you're talking about. I've done my research. I know. They all did it. Over $1 billion in most cases of tax breaks to big companies and fucking billionaire people. So no, you're not going to fix some budgets with simple marijuana tax. Not unless your state takes over the whole thing and makes all the money. And then maybe. Continuing to see a thriving illegal black market. No, not really. It's not thriving, and guess what? It's more of what has been called a gray market, and it's also more of a thing to where people can be responsible with small economy help in their own personal economies. And whatever, it doesn't even matter. You know, there is no thriving illegal black market in these regulated states. You can't make that fucking argument. Nobody will back you up. And it also said Sessions also claimed that they're experiencing an unabated sale of alcohol, which doesn't make any sense. Did anyone out there ever say, "Oh, hey, guess what? If we legalize marijuana, a whole bunch of people are just going to not drink anymore"? I've never heard anybody say that shit. But unbelievably, again, there's been statistics come out from states that have legalized medical marijuana, especially, because that's where we get the most data from, because they've been around longest with their programs. But they have done studies, and they have found decreases in alcohol purchase and consumption by like 5% average. So whatever, man. I don't even know why you included that. No one ever fucking made any promise like that. State regulatory frameworks established post-legalization have failed to meet each of the specific DOJ requirements on controlling recreational marijuana production, distribution, and use. And to that, I say that's bullshit. Also on the call announcing the SAM report was John Jackson, the chief of police for Greenwood Village in Colorado. Quote, "The commercialization of marijuana has offended even people who voted for legalization," he said. Offended. You know what? Them old crusty fucking people that are going to die in 5 or 10 years anyway, we don't really care if they're offended anymore. You mean those cute old racists? Old granny over there who says the N-word every fucking other word? We don't care if we offend them with our marijuana, all right? That's half the point, all right? So fuck off with that stupid point there, officer. People see billboards, articles in the newspaper, internet ads, and say, "I voted for it, but this isn't what I voted for." You don't get... that's not... who cares? What are you talking about? There's fucking commercials for alcohol, and there's commercials for cigarettes. There's commercials for, like, Vicodins and all these stupid pharmaceuticals. There's pill commercials non-stop on TV. You're going to be mad about some marijuana advertising? Just because it ain't, your thing don't mean you got to get mad just every time you see it. Church ain't my fucking thing, but I see it everywhere. They got their stupid billboards all over the fucking country talking about how I'm an evil sinner and I'm going to hell. So shut the fuck up about public space and advertising and shit. You're just ridiculous with this shit, man. We're sick of it. This isn't what I thought was going to happen with the dabbing and the access to minors. There's no access to minors, fool. What access to minors? And dabbing is just another form of consumption. So that would be like saying that you don't like people that, you got a problem with people that take alcohol and make fucking slammers out of them, or you don't like the way people smoke fucking hookahs or something. I mean, you can't bitch at a method of consumption if the substance is not illegal. In outlining its case against Colorado's marijuana regulatory regimen, the SAM report cited multiple news stories from the Cannabis and the Denver Post, including, and that's why the Cannabis doesn't always, they don't always do legalization a favor with their articles. And I'm not talking about you, or most of the people I read are pretty positive about legalization. I mean, everybody's going to be a realist, right? If we see something that we know is like, oops, man, this is kind of a little reckless or something, I don't see nothing like that. And this whole thing about dabbing, like, who the fuck cares? Do you see it anyway? Seems to me like you have to really look into it to even fucking notice someone dabbing. Where are you seeing this at? People are just dabbing right on the fucking park benches? I don't think so, bro. So you actually have to be like actively seeking out this dabbing thing to even notice people doing it or know what's going on. So here's some of the headlines that they have. Former marijuana enforcement officer entrepreneur indicted on massive Colorado trafficking ring. Exclusive traffic fatalities linked to marijuana are up sharply in Colorado. Is legalization to blame? I kind of want to pull that one up. I'm like, what are you talking about? It's the Denver Post, so number of drivers involved in fatal crashes in Colorado who tested positive for marijuana has risen sharply since 2013, more than doubling in that time, federal and state data show. All right, so this is what these idiots like Kevin Sabet and Jeff fucking Sessions always have. They always go back to this kind of bullshit right here. And you know what's wrong with this is they test positive for marijuana. Big fucking deal. They're involved in a fatal crash. We've parsed out the data, and there's nothing that supports this at all. It doesn't say whether the person was driving or not. It doesn't say whether they were the reason why the crash happened. This says drivers here, but that's not a qualifier in the fucking actual numbers we saw. And it's like, tested positive for marijuana, what? They just started doing this testing shit where they're really like adamant about trying to test people in fatal crashes. Like, test everybody in the car. Like they're doing weird things with the testing, to say the least. And more than doubling, once again, you start with a really low baseline number like 0 or 1, and you go to 3, and that's more than doubling. So we've seen real numbers, and none of this shit makes any sense. Increasingly potent levels of marijuana were found in positive testing drivers who died in crashes in Fort Range counties, according to the coroner. Data since 2013 compiled by the Denver Post. Nearly a dozen in 2016 had levels 5 times the amount allowed by law, and one was at 22 times the limit. Remember, the limit is super low. You could have that in your system for 3 days. So none of this shit's any kind of accurate. Yeah, I'm not going to read this whole article. We went from 0 to 100. People are dying. Now, this isn't real shit. We went from 0 to 100. That's just I don't know, what's that, adage or something? Some little phrase that he wants to say to try to freak it out. And then they use this famous shit. 2013 to 16 period saw a 40% increase in the number of all drivers involved in fatal crashes in Ohio. So you go from 627 to 880. That's a 40% increase. That doesn't have anything to do with marijuana. Now, this 145% jump drivers that tested positive for marijuana use. I don't know if they're talking about, the people that are crashing cars, but this is definitely not the case. Now, the alcohol and marijuana, they don't tell you whether or not they had other factors involved. And the thing about all this shit is, I'm just going to say this and be done with it, is these people are always acting like everybody is such a great fucking driver until they smoke some weed or drink some alcohol or have a fucking pill. People suck at driving a lot. I probably have to say that most accidents are just caused because they're accidents. The insurance companies know this shit. And they have never done these analyses of what people are, the substances that people are on in these accidents. Alcohol is the easy one because everything smells like booze when you get to the car crash. So again, if you want to read this study, feel free. Not study, but this report that Sam wrote. And basically, they're acting like these states are reckless fucking menaces to the rest of the country and they need to get shut down. Feel free to go over to Sam's Twitter account and tell him that, no, man, you are totally wrong on all this shit. If any of it was like really true to the point where it was like a problem, or you could say in a public health, a public safety problem, public health and safety issue, then they would handle it, all right? The states that are legalizing the marijuana would handle it there. People aren't dropping dead from overdoses from cannabis. And that's another thing that gets lost in all these conversations about fucking Sam and how he's going so like stupid and hard in sessions. These guys are fucking wasting way too. They're taking up all the oxygen, man. We need people to do something that's gonna stop people from fucking overdosing. Like 60,000 people a year now, man. Like, I can't even talk about this idiot no more. He's just pissing me off way too much with this shit. Smart approaches to marijuana. And anytime you see this guy talking shit, you always see this too. The comment section. 221 comments. I mean, this is like an old-ass article. It's like a week old, I think. There might be a troll or two in there, but for the most part, it's people just flaming this fucking idiot for all this dumb shit. We're sick of it. It's over.